Welcome to Seo Chen Watches, your go-to channel for exploring the stories, legends, and transformations behind the world's most fascinating timepieces. Today, we're diving into the rise and fall of a brand that once defined bold luxury and masculine design, a brand that everyone wanted on their wrist in the 2000s, but that has since lost its shine. This is the story of Panerai, and how one of watchmaking's hottest names slowly faded from the spotlight. There was a time, not too long ago, when Panerai was the status symbol among collectors, celebrities, and enthusiasts alike. The oversized cushion case, the bold numerals, and that unmistakable crown guard, these watches were instantly recognizable, unapologetically masculine, and oozing character. In the early 2000s, Panerai had something that few brands could capture: personality. It was big, confident, and cool. But before we talk about how things went wrong, let's rewind to how it all started. Panerai was founded back in 1860 in Florence, Italy, as a humble workshop and instrument maker. For decades, it supplied precision tools to the Italian Royal Navy, compasses, depth gauges, and, most famously, military diving watches. These early Panerai models, such as the Radiomir and later the Lumina, were built in collaboration with Rolex. They were designed for frogmen and commandos, watches made purely for survival, not fashion. The early Radiomirs used a radium-based luminescent paint called Radiomir, giving them incredible legibility in the dark. Later, the brand developed a safer compound called Lumina, which also became the name of its most iconic line. The design language that came, the cushion-shaped case, sandwich dial, and massive crown lock, would define Panerai forever. It was Italian flair mixed with utilitarian purpose, and for decades it stayed a military secret. Then came the 1990s, and the big comeback. After being acquired by the Richemont Group, Panerai reinvented itself as a luxury brand. And just when it was ready to make a splash, Hollywood came calling. Sylvester Stallone discovered Panerai while filming in Italy and wore it in the 1996 movie Daylight. He loved it so much that he ordered custom editions for himself and his friends, including one for Arnold Schwarzenegger. That moment transformed Panerai from an obscure tool watch brand into a full-blown style statement. Suddenly, everyone wanted that same rugged Italian diver look. The early 2000s were Panerai's golden years. The watches were scarce, oversized, and oozed testosterone. They stood out in a world full of conservative Swiss designs. The Lumina Marina and Radiomir models became instant icons, and Panerai's minimal design spoke volumes. It was loud without shouting. The brand was so cool that even people who didn't care about watches recognized it. It became the "it watch of the decade," but as the saying goes, what goes up must come down. And Panerai's success would eventually become its biggest weakness. The first cracks started to appear when the brand began overproducing and over-diversifying. What was once a small, exclusive lineup of models turned into a sea of endless limited editions and confusing references. Between 2014 and 2019, Panerai released dozens upon dozens of variations, small dial tweaks, case material changes, regional editions, until even collectors couldn't keep track. That sense of exclusivity vanished, replaced by fatigue and confusion. When everything is special, nothing is special. Then came the pricing problem. Panerai gradually pushed its prices upward into the same range as Rolex and Omega. But many of its models still used basic unitas or ETA movements, the same kind of calibers found in watches a fraction of the price. Collectors started asking, why pay luxury money for standard mechanics? When the brand finally introduced in-house movements, the prices went even higher. The result was a perception gap, watches that were more expensive, but not clearly more valuable. Meanwhile, the resale market noticed. Once you could sell a Panerai for close to retail or even more. But as supply ballooned and interest faded, prices dropped. The hype crowd, those who once bought Panerai as a flex, quietly moved on to Rolex, Tudor, and Audemars Piguet. There was also an identity crisis brewing. Panerai's charm had always been its Italian soul, that mix of military grit and Mediterranean style. But after Richemont moved production fully to Switzerland, many longtime fans felt the brand had lost its authenticity. The watches were now Swiss in engineering, but the marketing still leaned on Italian romance. And when Panerai started releasing slimmer, dressier models like the Lumina Dew, some with only 30 meters of water resistance, purists felt betrayed. A water-resistant dive watch that can't even swim. To the Panerai community, that felt like sacrilege. Speaking of the Panerai, that once loyal global fanbase, even they began to drift away. In the 2000s, Panerai had one of the most passionate collector communities in watchmaking. But over time, the brand seemed to forget what made them special. Marketing became more celebrity-driven and less enthusiast-focused. The sense of shared identity and insider passion that once fueled the Panerai culture slowly eroded. Another major factor in Panerai's decline was the shift in watch trends. In the early 2000s, big watches were in. The larger the case, the better. A 47mm Panerai was a symbol of power and confidence. But as the market evolved, people began gravitating towards smaller, more wearable designs. 36, 38, and 40mm became the new normal. Suddenly, what once looked bold now looked bulky. For many modern buyers, Panerai's iconic proportions just didn't fit their wrists or their lifestyles anymore, especially in Asia, where smaller sizes are preferred. At the same time, competition intensified. Brands like Tudor, Longines, and Shin began offering military-inspired field and dive watches with equal toughness, smaller sizes, and lower prices. Even Seiko and Citizen started tapping into the rugged, tool watch aesthetic that Panerai once dominated. Meanwhile, in the luxury space, Omega, IWC, and Breitling refined their own dive watch lines, giving buyers more choice and more value. Panerai's once unique visual identity now had plenty of imitators, and in some ways, better options. To their credit, Panerai has tried to pivot. In recent years, they've introduced smaller Lumina Dew models, emphasizing comfort and style. They've invested in sustainable materials like e-steel and Carbotech, aligning with modern environmental values. They've also launched experience editions, where buyers can actually dive with the Italian Navy or explore in extreme conditions, a clever way to bring back the spirit of adventure that defined their early success. But despite these efforts, the brand still faces an uphill battle. It's trying to be too many things at once: sustainable, luxurious, adventurous, fashionable, and that makes its message feel scattered. So why did Panerai lose its appeal? The answer isn't just one thing. It's a combination of overexposure, pricing missteps, design stagnation, and a loss of clear identity. What once felt raw and authentic now feels polished and corporate. And in the luxury world, authenticity is everything. Panerai was once a rebel brand, a watch that didn't care what anyone else was doing. Ironically, now it's trying too hard to fit in. But watch cycles come and go. Trends change, markets evolve, and brands reinvent themselves. If Panerai can strip back to what made it great, the minimalist design, the rugged authenticity, and that unmistakable Italian heart, it might just rise again. Until then, Panerai stands as a fascinating case study in the watch world, how a military tool became a luxury phenomenon, how fame can fade, and how even the mightiest brands must evolve or be left behind. Thanks for watching CO Chen Watches. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, especially if you've ever owned a Panerai or dreamed of one. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep your watches ticking on time, with CO Chen O'Clock.